This program is made possible in part with support from the Association of Alaska School Boards, advocating for children and youth by assisting school boards in providing quality public education through effective local governance, the National Center for Media Engagement, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Good evening, and welcome to Getting to Graduation, a community conversation about the path to the high school diploma. I'm Betsy Brenneman. Thank you for joining us on television, online, or on the radio for this important discussion. Getting to graduation is not a simple topic. It is complicated by wealth and race, and yes, the teen brain. And for many Alaskan families, how they feel about school is a result of the historical trauma experienced by Alaska's Native peoples at the hands of a system whose central goal is assimilation. In our country, 1 million students each year leave high school before they graduate. In Juneau, that translates to 100 teens every year. Of the freshmen who started 9th grade here last August, nearly 1 in 3 will fail to graduate in 4 years. Longtime national data are clear. Lack of a diploma carries high costs. Those who don't graduate are more likely to wind up in jail, to be underemployed, and will earn $630,000 less in their lifetime than the person who finishes high school. The average wage of those who drop out is $25,000 a year, which is below the poverty line for a family of 4 in Alaska. They are more likely to be dependent on public assistance and public health care, and a child of someone who drops out is more likely to drop out as well. Poverty is the fault line. Kids in the poorest 20% of households are 5 times more likely to drop out than students in the top 20%. If a child is not reading at grade level by 3rd grade, they have a 1 in 8 chance of ever catching up and are much more likely to leave school. Missing school is a predictor as well. A student who attends less than 80% of the time is less likely to graduate. And remember, Alaska law allows students to drop out when they turn 16. Now there is good news. It is, across the country and in Alaska, the dropout rate is declining and the graduation rate is climbing. In Alaska, the percentage of students leaving school each year is under 5%. But the demographics of who drops out in Alaska have not changed. So while trends are hopeful, the complicated factors related to dropping out are challenging. Tonight, we will engage in conversation about getting to graduation and how we can better support young people. The centerpiece of this conversation will be students themselves. We will hear from a variety of teens, and youth will have the last word this evening. Many of them now are over at the Zach Gordon Youth Center across from our studios, where Andy Klein is going to be talking to them. Andy?
Thanks, Betsy. That's right. We're here at Zach Gordon. We're actually in an old racquetball court where the climbing wall is, and we've got a group of students already and young people already gathered here who are going to be talking to us a little bit later and have the last word, as you said, about the graduation rate, what can improve in the graduation rate, things they think can be different, things that maybe, as we have this discussion tonight, we might have missed that might be effective in helping kids graduate. So with that, we'll get back to you, Betsy, and we'll check in with you later tonight.
Thanks, Andy. In the end, it is our hope that every participant, viewer, and listener will have an idea of at least one thing we each can do to positively impact the high school graduation rate. We will have 3 circles of conversation this evening. First, we will hear from kids and families, then from representatives of education and community organizations, and finally from decision makers. In between these circles of conversation, we'll hear from a variety of young people who share their high school experience. So, our first talking circle, as we call you. Welcome, everybody. We're glad that you are here. And we know that each of you have a story to tell. The purpose of this community conversation is to understand what each of us can do to support youth who want to graduate. What did you encounter on your education path, either as a student or as a parent of a student? And what, if anything, made a difference? Who would like to start? Randy, do you want to start?
Thank you. My name is Randy Wanamaker. I'm a Juneau Douglas High School graduate, the class of '75, but I'm originally a member of the class of '62. I spent 13 years as a high school dropout, and I attended school to my very last day of my senior year and then left for the service. I got a GED. It didn't do me much good. I can tell you that all of the problems of being a high school dropout, underemployment, last hired, first fired, those are real. Those were the things I experienced. And yet I was smart enough. I was gradually climbing the ladder of success in heavy industry, but I was always training my new supervisor. And the only difference between me and them is they had finished high school and they were going on to college. Looking back at why didn't I finish high school, it was because it's complex, but I was an Alaska Native in a school system that did not welcome really having Alaska Natives and other minorities in the system. And the community did not want to acknowledge the problem or do something about it. And there was no support for someone like me. I knew I wasn't making it, but I didn't know why. I didn't know anyone I could talk to about it. And there was no outreach to me to say, you need to finish this. I didn't graduate because I lacked 1/4 of English grammar. Yet no one told me that, and I didn't know how to find out on my own. And it wasn't that I didn't like school. School was fine. That's where all my friends were. There was nobody out there when I was skipping school because I couldn't stand to be in school another moment. There was nobody out there to talk to, nobody to visit with. That's what it's like when you're a dropout. There's nobody out there to hang out with. They're all at the school doing things. But there was just no one to talk to, no one to advise me on what I could do to make it to graduation. The support wasn't there, and I didn't know where to turn for help. So it took me 13 years to figure out I had made a mistake. And I went back and did the coursework to graduate and went on to college.
Great,
And
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Someone else who has an experience either of feeling support, not feeling support? Anybody else? Marcelo.
I'm Marcelo Quinto, and I'm also a graduate of Juneau High School, class of 1960. And I think I have about 10 brothers and sisters, all who have gone through the school system here in Juneau. We were born and raised here. And I think different from Randy, I started 9 grade school years through the parochial school, which, and if any of you had been around and been to the parochial school, it was really a no-nonsense situation. Everybody was treated the same. And, the first commandment was don't forget your homework. And so it was, and it really actually, a lot of the Native students, a lot of the half Filipino, half Tlingit children went to school there there because, and again, it really was a race. You were not really accepted, in the Native community at the time, and you weren't accepted in the white community. And the Filipinos are really the only ones that really took us in as part of their children. And the other thing is that the government at the time said that if the head of household was a non-native, you were not considered a native in this by the government, which meant that you were not available for any of the programs that came up. So there was a lot of things and those that I graduated with and went to school with have a very still strong ties in this community, and I think it's helped an awful lot of our children and stuff to get through the school system. But it wasn't fail safe. I have a son who graduated from Juneau Douglas High School and went on to college, and he's a 15-year career police officer here in Juneau. So he's done very well. I had a daughter who went through the alternative high school, and it took her and struggled for a long time for her to find herself and to find that she was really worth something. And she finally did it. She went through she went through beauty school, and then she went on and got the advance, and then I think it created things for her. She was always an excellent student, and she was very bright, but she got lost. And I think, like Randy, she was not able to find where that niche was.
Okay.
And the further she got behind, the
Yeah.
further her social life went, in the scheme of things. So
Yeah.
I was happy to see that, when she finally did it and finally said, you know what, I have completed something, it changed her life, I think, to finally come to a point where she made something of herself, where she finished something.
Okay.
And I think that made the major amount of difference to her.
Let's go to a young person who, go ahead, just hold it up to your, okay, hold it up to your,
Up here?
yeah. No, close to your mouth, but toward your mouth. There you go.
Hi,
Thank
my
you.
name is Skylar Mazon. I am a graduate of Yakuza Alternative High School for class of 99, and I was originally in class of 1998. I do want to share some of my experiences going through high school and just what got me through. I was a sophomore in high school before I actually realized I actually wanted to learn and challenge myself. And I found myself misplaced as a youth growing up, all the way since I was a little kid. And they'd have me around these special needs kids, and I always felt like there's more I can actually learn and attain in life. And one day I just woke up and said, hey, I want to take regular classes, and I was a little frustrated, and my mother didn't want me to take regular classes. She wanted me to stay where I was, but that wasn't enough for me. And I made an agreement to stay in this individual education program, is what they called it back then, for students who had special needs. And I said, okay, well, if I pass this year, I would like to take regular classes and be with the rest of my peers. So I finished out the year, and then next year later, I started opening up my mind a little more, and it was kind of nice.
Did that just come from you, or was there someone in the system? You said you just woke up one morning.
Well,
what caused you to just wake up one morning and say, I want more?
Well, my grandpa is a big influence in my life.
Ah.
He's always told me, like, well, you can go to school, get an education, make a living, have a career, have a family, all those things. So I always listen to my grandpa and my elders. But getting through high school, I just want to say that for me, it was really helpful to surround myself around people that wanted to see me succeed. And I'm not sure if I can see her right now, but Lori, I'm sure you're out there somewhere. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. How about someone else who wants to talk about their experience? Go ahead.
My name is Kayla Ryan. I graduated in 2008, 2 years after I should have graduated. Like many kids in school, I had learning disabilities. We were poor, so we didn't have much money and stuff, and I was in and out of my mother's house, crashing on Friends' couch, in and out of Cornerstone. When I landed in Juneau, Alaska in 1999, I was behind in school, which made it a struggle throughout the rest of my years in school. But I learned when I was in JDHS, some teachers don't tolerate that. They think you're beneath their help. They don't want to help you because you have learning disabilities, and you might as well be stupid because they don't want to waste their time with you. And so it was frustrating. And then you have your peers who because you have learning disabilities, make fun of you and stuff. So when I dropped out in '06, I was in 11th grade. I had credits of a 10th grader, and I didn't know what else to do. I did not want to continue at JDHS because of that. So I worked part-time here and there. There was a bunch of people out in the community who helped me. Sook, if I'm saying that right, Elizabeth Dahl, one day was telling me about my GED, and I was like, I don't want my GED. I want my diploma. I said, but I refuse to go back to JDHS. And she told me about Yakus. When I was in school, the only thing I heard about Yakus was it was for the druggies and the pregnant people. And I was like, I'm neither of that. Well, Lori Scanley called me up one day and told me to come over to her office to help her fill out paperwork, because with my disability, I struggle with paperwork and it's hard for me to fill out. I looked at the phone and was like, this is the principal of Yakus? Okay, maybe it is all the shot to give. And it did. And it was a struggle at Yakus, because when I was at JDHS, they told me I did not need to do science because of my learning disabilities. Walked into Yakus and they were like, you gotta do science. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't understand this. Thankfully, Sarah, who was the science teacher there, then helped me a lot. And I was able to walk in regular stream classes. The teachers there walked with me, and they cared about me.
So it was the teachers who, it was your desire, your motivation, but it was also people who came into your life who were willing to work with someone with learning disabilities.
And wouldn't hesitate to call you if you weren't in school and wondering where you were.
Uh-huh.
So I graduated in 2008.
You got your diploma.
I got my diploma. I was student of the year at Yakus. And a lot of it, I think, I would have probably graduated if it wasn't for Lori Scanley, Joyce Thorson, Sarah. Still can't say your last name, Sarah. But the teachers who really worked with me.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
We have a few minutes left. How about Crystal? Yes, I was looking for the mic.
My name is Crystal Rogers. I graduated from Yakusuke Dakihide as well in 2002, and I did graduate on time, but I think it took a lot for me to get to that point, because my experience in high school was not a very good one, because the semester before my freshman year, my twin sister and I were taken from my mother and put into state's custody, and we were separated. And my mom was Tlingit, she was Alaska Native, and they did not seem to not follow the ICWA laws and placing us with Native families. And my sister and I were separated. We were isolated from our family and our culture, and during that time I moved 7 times in 4 years while I was in high school. And I think I had a new social worker every time. So life was very unstable for me, and most of my childhood we had spent well below the poverty line. And my mom sort of struggled with tragedy in her life that she never really recovered from. And I know it comes from the tragedy that my grandmother experienced and her parents as well. And I don't really feel like at any point that was addressed by any of our institutions, social and education. And when I was in elementary school, 1st grade to 8th grade, I tested into the gifted and talented program, the accelerated program. And because I was put in foster care before high school, we went right into the at-risk program, which was choice. And people like Lori Scanling, Mark Roshi, Barbara Bonner were there as teachers who showed that they cared. And so I'm grateful to have people like that in my life, but I also feel like there was not one person who talked to me ever about going to college and this is how you do it. And there was nobody in my family to help me through that process. And so when my twin sister and I went to college 3 years after graduating from high school, we had a little bit of help from the tribe here in town. We were just sort of floundering, just struggling with everything was new. Every college term, every financial aid, everything was brand new, and we really just sort of struggled through it without anybody to help us.
So support would have been greatly desired at that point. You would have appreciated that. And did you know that you needed it at the time? And did you try and not get it? Or
college?
In terms of when you thought about going to college, did you approach people, or did you just really not know quite how to go about it and didn't know who to ask?
I worked for the state of Alaska for the 3 years after high school, and I always told my mom, I don't want to bake groceries. I don't want to flip burgers. And my mom always said, well, bakers can't be choosy. And I'm like, Mom, what does that mean? And I just knew that I wanted something more. And I applied. I moved 3 times to higher paying and permanent jobs within the state, but I knew I couldn't get much further without an education. And it wasn't really until I got to college that I started learning about intergenerational trauma and the things that happen to Native people, you know, in our not so distant past, and was able to put those lessons, to put my life within that context and sort of separate people from the problems that we experience, and to so I didn't have to feel like a defective human being, you know, somebody who just wasn't good at something, or who wasn't successful because of something that I did or didn't do. And that was really helpful for me. And it took me 7 years, but I'm just a couple of weeks away from getting my bachelor's. And
congratulations.
So,
thank you for that story. You've got the mic, sir. I think you're next.
Hi, I'm Dustin Rumfeld. I think the biggest key for success for graduating from Yakuska Dakahiti High School would be the teachers. They're a big support. I mean, they kind of feel like family at times. They're there for you. And before high school, I had a hard time catching up with grades. I was always slacking because of my friends, bad influences. And for high school, it was the same way. Freshman year, sophomore year, bad influences. I got good grades, but it was the bad influences that held me back. And came junior year, I went to treatment, and it was harsh on me. Came out a different person, and I've gotten my grades up because of Yakus. They've helped me. I'm already signed up for college courses. I'm already looking into the mining path.
And you say that it was because of personal interactions, again, with teachers. Is that really what turned it around for you?
Yeah, it was. After school, I would hang out with a couple of teachers and have personal conversations and tell personal stories, and they would understand, and they'd even help me with homework right after that. So.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. You get the last word. There's just a few minutes left. Introduce yourself, and I'll come over on this side of you.
Hi, I'm Amaretta Wesley, and I've had many problems already in high school. I had to drop out when I was a junior because of a whole bunch of drama. And I decided that I would go back, and I was very surprised when I actually walked back into the high school. Lots of people looked at me and cheered me on, and it was great. But I still had it in the back of my head, I won't make it, and I don't know if I can do the classes right or something like that. And then I found out about CARES, the CARES program, from a friend of mine, and I've gotten a lot of support from it, and also teachers and counseling at the schools and stuff. So
CARES is a credit recovery program.
Yes.
So you explain that just briefly if you can, how you get to, why don't you explain it in your words?
CARES is pretty much fun classes so that you can get the credit for a class like English, and you are not like sitting reading a book. You are actually doing things like going to a poetry slam and stuff like that. So.
Okay. And that's been working for you. That's
Yes.
been great. Thanks, Amaretta. Finally, let's quickly, we've just got a little bit of time left for our first talking circle here. I'd like to go around quickly, and in a few seconds, if any of you have one thing to tell the community, our town or any town, that they could do to support high school kids graduating, what would it be?
I would tell them to never give up.
Okay. Very good. Very clear. Very simple. Anybody else? One thing that a town or a community could do to help kids graduate. You want to pass?
The community needs to acknowledge that there are problems that only the community can solve. It's not a school district problem. It's not a student problem. It's a community problem.
Okay. Marcella?
You know, I belong to the Alaska Native Brotherhood, and we would welcome any of our Native students or anyone to come to tell us, you know, what their problems are, because the primary work we try to do from Camp 70 is work with our educational.
Okay. Education is big for A and B. Anybody else? One thing, Kayla, that you can think of? That you would tell people, that you can tell people that would support kids, that would be a support to kids?
Just to listen. Yeah, we have drama. I'll give you that. There was plenty of drama when I was in high school. But there's usually something to that drama. Whether it's people getting in fights, hating each other, whether it's different races fighting among each other. Just because teachers think it's a little Scrabble, oh, it'll get over it. There are kids who don't, because they don't have a release for that. And some of them sadly end up committing suicide. I think the teachers in our community need to look at that and go, how can we help the teens so they can graduate?
Okay, teachers. You have an idea?
Yeah, I think speaking on a community level, we could acknowledge intergenerational trauma and work to make high school much more relevant to our diverse population, and to also, no matter what a young person is going through in their life, no matter what it looks like from the outside, to know that they need to hear that they are not defective human beings and that they have it in them to do whatever it is that they want to go to college or to do something big and meaningful with their lives.
Thank you.
They need to hear that from everyone around them.
Thank you very much. Wow. Really, thank you for being willing to share your personal stories. Appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you. Next, we will talk with community members who work in organizations that focus on youth and education. But first, we're going to hear from 3 current high school students who share their perspective on their path to graduation. You will hear about the benefits of personalization and the need for personal responsibility. Leading off is Eric Nordgren, who got grounded in part thanks to football.
Well, my challenges for school has probably been, I've been struggling since freshman year. I was a former marijuana abuser, and from my sophomore year and my junior year, the beginning of my sophomore year, I was in this treatment called Raven's Way, and I thought that helped me out for a little bit of time, but then the peers here that I've made friends with in the past before I went to treatment, when I came back from treatment, I became friends with them again. So I just kind of got back to my old habits, and I started doing everything all over again. So then I started to do like what I did, and I was failing, and I was getting Fs in all my classes, and I wasn't passing. So my parents got fed up with it, and I kind of, it was kind of getting old to me. So I went to this program for 3 months down in Fairbanks, and I got my credits up in school. I came back. I've been sober for 1 year and 2 months now. So and all my grades are probably, you know, I got A's and B's right now. I'm doing pretty well, and yeah, that's basically it. Like, the only thing that slowed me down in school is probably my peers. That's probably the only thing that will slow you down, is the bad peers that are in the school.
Well, the challenges that I had in school were just doing the assignments and getting them all turned in. I really didn't feel like I had a real need to get the assignments in. And so I kind of just made it like a game and made it a system that I had to put it in, or else I didn't win. I felt like I just had to go out and do stuff with friends and didn't really have time for assignments, and so that made it seem like it was less important. But in my later years of high school, during my junior and senior years of high school, I kind of realized that getting my grades up was more important. Smaller classes would be a lot better. I am in a gym class at the moment that has somewhere between 40 and 50 students, and it is really hard to kind of talk with the teacher when she's trying to get an activity going with 30, 40 other people. And so it'd be nice to have smaller classes. What I would tell kids to do is focus more on grades. Your grades really matter, and there's support out there. There's always someone willing to help you. And for the teachers, or for the parents, there's, I think that you need to help kids more. Like my parents, my dad per se, was never really a support, really. And he was always busy, so I was always not very supportive there. And so I always had to kind of do it myself.
If somebody told me to come out and, you know, hang out or do just to goof around and not do any work, I think that was the biggest barrier for me, because I couldn't say no to anybody. So it's just hard for somebody to say, like, let's go do this, and I say no. It's just, and another barrier would be homework. I have trouble studying by myself because my family, they're smart, but they're not really, you know, able to help me with my homework, and so I usually have a difficult time doing my homework. I'd like to say I'm a class clown. I like to make people laugh. I like to goof around and not do work. But when I came into choice, Bonner, you know, she wasn't having any of that. She'd like tell me to, you know, be quiet, or, yeah, it was different from any other teacher that I've had, and I really appreciate it though, because if she didn't crack down like she did, then I wouldn't be a senior this year. With Choice, they like let us interact with the real world. Like, we'd go to internships and learn how a real job feels like, or we'd go to college, the UAS, and we experience, you know, what classes they have to offer, and it was just different from what school really was, I feel like. And I was excited to come to school every day because of Choice. There's at least one adult that you can trust in school. And once you get that trust into the school, you'll know that it's a better place. They get you, you know, lined up with more opportunities than you can ever imagine.
More thoughts from youth. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us in this second Talking Circle. Each of you is connected with a community organization that cares about education, and nearly all of you are parents whose children experienced the Juneau School District. From your professional and parental perspective, what do youth need to be successful, and what's missing? And Elsa, how about you start us off?
My name is Elsa DeMexa. I'm the Director of Communities and Schools, which is a dropout prevention program in Juneau. We are part of a national organization. It's the national organization is the largest dropout prevention program in the country. You know, listening to a lot of the students speak tonight, there are, you know, things that are in common. They talk about drama at home or lack of support in the schools. And we find that in our work in this, with communities and schools. We find that there are many factors to dropout. It could be, you know, personal, an individual's makeup, lack of support in the school system, and you heard the students speak about that, poverty, a myriad of things. But there's also mention of race, and I have to say race in itself is not a dropout issue, meaning it doesn't cause dropout. It is how people deal with race that may cause people to drop out. I raised 2 children in this community. As you can see, I'm a person of color, and both of them have succeeded. One of them was passed the New York bar at the age of 25, and the other one is in law school right now. So if race in itself was an issue, they would have, you know, not been successful. But
so what's missing? What's missing?
I think, you know, we need to look at the whole community. Of course, what goes on in the school district is a reflection of what goes on in the community. I think we need to support our children. We need to have the whole community being involved. We need businesses to be involved to say, you know, not to say don't hire dropouts, but maybe hire dropouts and say, hey, you have to we'll give you a year to finish your high school diploma and give you 2 years. You know, okay. Those kinds of support. People volunteering in the school system, tutoring, calling and saying, what can I do in the school district? You know, those kinds of things.
Okay. I'm wondering, Brian, I'm going to have you take the mic here. As Juneau Economic, we've been talking about economics and the connection between dropouts or dropping out, leaving school at some point, and what that does to a person individually, but maybe also you have a perspective on what that does to the community.
Certainly young people, again, my name is Brian Holst, I'm the director at the Juneau Economic Development Council. If they understood fully when they're that age of dropping out, that dropping out is such a bad idea, they would make other choices. I mean, the surveys show that 3/4 of adults that are dropouts, if given the chance to choose again, would choose to stay in school. But how do we let them know at that age that how important it is for them to stay in school? And that's challenging. Yeah. Certainly, I think we all know the numbers. Understand that every year of high school, every year of education has a direct impact on your ability to earn income later in life. So the economic argument of staying in school is really clear. How well can we compel that on young people? Certainly in the quality of life of our community, having a community where families know that the environment is supportive so that kids succeed in school will make people want to come to our community as well. And so that's also attractive for us as a community.
Okay. And anybody else have a idea of what is missing here? What supports we do need? What is something perhaps that you have seen that you would like to be happening that isn't happening? Frida, did you?
Thank you. My name is Frida Westman. I'm the ANS Grand President. I'm the president of my local camp, Glacier Valley ANS Camp 70. I'm a lifelong Juneau resident. I graduated from JDHS. I have 4 children who graduated, and a long experience with the school district. One early memory that I have is of a school teacher requiring one of my classmates to wash her face in the back of the classroom before school every morning. I have a lot of memories that are along those same lines. My son graduated in 2006, and he experienced different difficulties. One of them being in a class, overhearing a student say that someone should do to Alaska Natives what Hitler did. So this is not something that happened a long time ago. This is happening now. I think that a student should be able to go to a teacher and have a teacher do something. Okay. The teacher overheard this and said nothing. My son did not tell me this until after he was out of school.
And obviously it causes emotion.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. I think there are disproportionality of Alaska Native students who are represented in special needs programs. There's an underrepresentation of Alaska Native students in any extracurricular activity. And why is that? There is nothing inherently wrong with Alaska Native students, yet they are very overrepresented in the those not finishing school. Mm-hmm. And that's a big problem. It's been a big problem my whole life. And we have poured a lot of money into this. And I think if there's one thing that we can do, it is to treat all children like they can do it. They can graduate, every single one of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Frida. Jackie, where's Jackie? Jackie, I've lost you, sorry. Response to that? Thoughts on that? What are your thoughts about, as a former assistant principal, you know?
Yep. We all have our personal stories, of course, going through our school systems. Right now, I guess the thing that might be missing is I know that my new position as the education director for the Alaska Heritage Institute, we're putting the student at the center of all the focus now in terms of building summer enrichment programs for Alaska Native students, working in partnership with the Juneau School District and other schools in the region. I think the piece that's missing is for the school districts to really understand that when we come to the table and we want to work with you as true partners, we have to make sure that it's a true partnership, that there's equity there and representation, the voices are equal in weight in terms of making decisions regarding program development, that the voices at the table are all being heard and acknowledged. So we're after, I know that SHI has signed off on memorandum of agreement with the Juneau School District recently and the University of Alaska. So at SHI, we're really looking at being equal partners.
I see. Okay.
And having a strong voice in terms of developing those programs that we can wrap around from the community around Alaska Native students. And we're at the table to realize together the potential that each child has. And that's the focus.
Okay. Laird, who you're doing education with the tribe, Clinton-Haida Central Council, and I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on what, and you also had a son who went through the system. What are your thoughts about what youth need to be successful from your perspective at the tribe, what you've seen?
Yeah, I'm Laird Jones at Central Council Clinton-Haida, the Vocational Training and Resource Center, and I guess from my perspective as in the position, is we're working with a lot of students that haven't made it through the system or barely made it through the system and need remedial help. So that's, you know, a lot of our effort. And we do spend a lot of time in trying to get them up to speed, trying to find different ways, you know, distance education and, you know, different ways of trying to reach the students. I guess just reflecting on the first panel and the early discussion here, I think some things that are missing is, I think as Randy talked about, just that acknowledgement that this is a community issue. Even as a district, I mean, we've been working to try to interact the Juneau School District with UAS and, being part of that with different peoples. But there's a high percentage of students that come out of the Alaska school systems that have to take remedial English or remedial math. And one number I've heard is 60% that have to take one, two, or both. And that's way too high. And that's kids that have made it through the system and then are trying to fulfill their education further at a local school. Acknowledging the issues in the district, I think, is paramount. That expectations of all students to succeed. And our son going through the system, we went to a teacher and tried to find out, that we heard about this advanced class that was being offered the next school year, and the teacher's response, "Oh, we all think our children are gifted," and wouldn't do the referral. But you can do a parent referral. So we took the effort, talked to people, and made that effort. So I think encouraging all students that they can succeed, I think is paramount. And expectations, equal expectations across the board.
How about somebody from the district? The CARES program, Yakus, Bernie?
Yeah. I'm Bernie Sorensen, and I currently run the After School CARES program. It's a credit recovery program for students. Prior to that, I retired from the Juneau School District and was a principal at the high school and was an elementary principal and even served as assistant soup for a while. All of what I've heard totally makes sense, and I wouldn't add anything to that. I think something that's coming to me as I look down my little list that I prepared was that it's applied learning, lifelong learning. And I was thinking of the students who've spoken so far. What that really means is high expectation. It means connecting what we do in the schools to everyday life. When we asked many of our students, what was your challenges in school, along with all of I've heard, there's also that lack of connection, and they've said I was bored, and we've all heard bored. I heard that as an elementary principal, kindergarten, first grade kids, but I think I've learned over the years that it was real, that boredom truly is a real thing that we struggle to accept as educators, that it's about how what we're doing now connects to, they're looking way further than we give them credit for, to the life they're headed. So that would be the one thing I would offer out, is that we get more applied real life learning, which includes having to partner with our community, because most teachers, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but their degrees about teaching and not about the real life. So much of what they teach, especially at high school, they don't apply it in real life situations. They've never been economists, never have been a scientist or a mathematician in the sense of a job other than teaching it in the schools, and it's very different, is what I've learned.
Let's go to a teacher. Gretchen, you're in the school right now.
I am. I think I'm the only current classroom teacher here tonight. I've been teaching for 16 years at the high school level, and also worked with runaway youth before I was a teacher, and realized that making connections to students, I think, is the most important thing you can do. I always say student first, content second. And that has been my philosophy since I started teaching here, and it will be my philosophy until I leave here. And I think I've had a lot of success with students in building relationship with them personally. And I have had a very successful rate as a teacher to get my students out of my classes. I've taught all levels. In history and sociology and psychology, I've dealt with advanced students and regular students as well. And I think the most important thing that I have felt is making sure that they feel that I care about them, and they know that I care about them, and they know that I'm a teacher that they can trust and come to. And I think a lot of your children here would agree with that. So I think what's missing is a sense of community with the teachers and including the teachers as a part of the community and not pitting us against the rest of the community, but including us in the conversation and realizing that we wouldn't do this job if we didn't care about young people.
Sarah, how about, we've heard a lot about Yacuz tonight from the students, and you are the principal of Yacuz. What are you seeing that what does it take for youth to be successful from your perspective?
Well, I think we have a lot of truth being told in this circle by the students and by those here. I think that our vision at Yacuz Dakahidi is graduation and beyond. And one of the things that I feel is so important is, first, don't label kids. When they are 14, 15, 16, 18 years old or a little bit beyond, putting a label on them does so much damage, and it is so easy to do. The other thing is to nurture dreams. So many kids, when they come to Yacuz, they don't know what they want to do after they graduate. And it makes getting that diploma so much harder if you don't have any idea what comes next. And so graduation and beyond is what we live every day. And we really try to embed real world into our classes, make school meaningful. Teachers become real people to our students, and we have relationships with them. I think that's what really helps. And we welcome community into our school and do so many phone calls to people to have them come in and share their stories, share what it takes to be out in the world. And I think that's what makes a difference for our students.
We don't have too much time left. Barb, another district representative, any thoughts about what K through 12, maybe the big picture of all the way through, what does it take for kids to be successful, native, non-native, whatever their, we've heard about learning disabilities, we've heard about race, we've heard about a lot of different things that kids bring all these things with them to school. As some of the kids talked about, some drama comes along with it as well. So what's missing? What's necessary to make them successful in this big melting pot of what goes on in a school?
Well, first of all, I want to say, if I was to say it very succinctly, it would be about acknowledgement and respect, and you've heard that already. But let me go a little bit deeper at what that means to me. From a traditional perspective, I want to acknowledge all of you and to welcome you here to Ak Kwan, Taku Kwan. I'm a child of the Tlinedi, the dog salmon, through my father, and who was adopted by my clan leader, who is my mother's cousin, Dr. Walter Sobolov. And I say that because we stand on land that has a history, and it has a knowledge, it has an education system that, for the most of us, we don't know and we don't care to know. And when I say respect, I think about my mother, who was a child that was born in Killisnoo and then Angoon, and then at a very early age was placed in a mission school in Skagway, where she was punished for speaking her language. Today, this very day, she was at Suntakahini teaching Tlingit alongside the Indian Studies paraeducator and other Gold Belt Heritage specialists to help the middle school kids, all kids, learn Tlingit. And it's in the language that is the traditional world view and the values. And those values that we hear of here are so important to create a place of respect, a place where all people feel welcome. We have 5,000 students in the district. A little over 1,300 are Alaska Native, Native American, K through 12. Okay. My role in the district is to make sure that this environment is respectful, that acknowledges place, acknowledges tradition, and acknowledges the purpose for each one of these children. And I'm happy to say that I've had experience as a former Sea-Alaska Heritage Education Director. I had the privilege of helping to envision and implement the first Tlitsin leadership camp, where we had high school students from all over Southeast come to the camps, a 12-day camp, to learn other ways of knowing their own history. What's important about that is that this camp and those that have followed through Gold Belt Heritage have produced students who came to us with Fs, who left in 12 days doing a 360, having earned high school credit as well as college credit. Great. They heard the message that you're special, that you deserve an education of high standards, a rigorous content. We heard about that. So what's missing? It's about that deeper knowledge of self, of place, and its purpose in our community.
Okay, thank you. Any other last thoughts? We have just a few seconds left. Elsa?
Sorry.
Needs a mic real quick.
There are some basic things. I mean, to follow up on what Barbara said, what Barbara's talking about is empowering kids. Respecting them means it gives them power. The other thing is the basic need of food. These kids come to school hungry. They cannot learn in the classroom when they're hungry. The community needs to feed the kids.
Okay, thank you. We are out of time, folks. We are sorry, but we do thank you for sharing that perspective, and we thank you for the work that you all do to try to help kids graduate and to try to improve our graduation rate. Thank you all for being here. Next, we will hear from those in power in our community, elected officials and others who have control over the laws and budgets. But first, 3 youth talk about their path to graduation, support from schools, including the Choice program, which is a school within a school, we haven't described that so well, at JDHS, and how race and prejudice is part of the high school environment.
I'm not a homework doer. Time I would skip to do work from another class in the library. That sounds weird, but yeah. I tell my mom I really need to get caught up in that class, and then I just go to the library and do that.
So you weren't really leaving campus, you were just trying to keep up with the work. Interesting, interesting. What happened when you got caught at school?
When I didn't get caught.
People didn't notice you weren't there?
Nope. My sophomore year, I got into the wrong crowd. I got with kids who skipped a lot. So I skipped with them. And then my junior year, because I did that, I failed one class. And I had a crazy counselor, so she put me into Choice my junior year, but that actually helped a lot, and it was fun. And then this year, I haven't skipped. I had a internship job at the state office building for free, because it was the Choice, what they do on Thursdays. And then so they liked me a lot, and they were hiring an intern. So in the summer, I got that job, and that's where I'm working right now. After graduation, I want to go to college.
One thing that was really hard for me in school, knowing I couldn't focus as much, and I thought marijuana was more of a selfish excuse for myself to pay attention, when really I just needed to do it myself. So then I started getting more, I just needed to smoke weed to concentrate, but I could have done it myself without it. But that took a big role in high school for me, because it was always around. I talked to some counselors, and they helped me think stuff out thoroughly and stuff. If you be straight honest with them, then they helped me out a lot that way, because I was going through a lot. And when I was in school, I was always angry, and so that's where alcohol and pot came into play. And so that was just an excuse to do, or to try and get over it. But that, and my mom helped me out a lot as well. She supported me through a lot, and she always told me to do school and do good in school and stuff like that. But sometimes when you're under the influence of substances and stuff like that, you tend to not look at it as important as it really is. At the end, I actually started really trying, and it was pretty worth it.
A hard thing is really to find a good group of friends and being able to communicate with teachers the way you need to. High school, the ugly part, I guess you would say, is simply the teachers don't really know what's going on. They don't really ask about it very much. You have those few teachers who really understand their kids and will talk to them, not about school, but about personal life and home life. and like realizing why they may struggle. You know, maybe they have some differences or illnesses or brain disorders or whatever, and they don't really try to understand. The usage of the N-word in school, it's gotten to be a point a little bit of ridiculousness. Like, and it's like, I think because there's such a low African American population that they don't realize who's listening. And there's been like instances, and I'll like hear it, and I'll look at them, I'll be like, what'd you say? And they'll look and be like, nothing. And they'll just have like this freaked out look on their face, like, yes, I heard you. Like, and it's like, they don't really realize exactly what they're saying or what it means or any of that. So it is a little bit difficult being maybe like one of 7. I've had my ups and downs. I mean, freshman year, it was a little bit easier coming from a private school because the work was much harder there, I will say that. But then sophomore year, you get mixed up in relationships and friendships, and just that threw me off a lot, definitely. But this year, I could say I've gotten back on the right path and like gotten back to studying. A thing that's really helped me a lot is this year I did volleyball, which I had totally given up sports after I had moved here. I was just depressed and I was like, I'm done. But volleyball really got me back into the groove and got me back on schedule. And I would tell the authority to really look into a kid's life. Don't just be that hard hand all the time, to really have fun with them, open up to them, let them open up to you, and find out what they really want and what they're looking for and how they can help them achieve that goal.
Each of those young people has a strong message, as have many we've heard from this evening during our community conversation about getting to graduation. Now it's time to hear from decision makers, people in power who have influence over the laws and money and programs that impact high school graduation. So welcome, you powerful people. Mayor Sanford, Mr. Gelbrick, Superintendent Gelbrick, Deputy Commissioner Morse is here as well, and others. This is an important topic, as you well know. What, if anything, did you hear so far this evening that has caused you to think, here's what we ought to be doing differently? And I, in my position, am willing to commit to trying to do that. Tough question in some ways. Now, I'm not talking about philosophizing about education here, because we all know the high school diploma is important. But we're talking about what leaders like you can do to move toward positive change and practical support for those who want to graduate. Who would like to start?
I'll start.
Randy, you want to give him the mic? Mr. Wanamaker.
Thank you. To me, the important thing that we can do is engage the community in developing and supporting solutions. This is a very long-term process, and it will not work if the community is not behind it. Throwing money at the problem isn't going to solve anything. Quick fixes won't do anything. We already have lots of laws against virtually everything. That's not the answer. The answer is engaging the community, getting them to accept that these conditions actually exist and are causing these problems, and their willingness to change, to become a more egalitarian society, willing to support everyone in their efforts to achieve a good education.
Okay. Anyone else who feels like in their role they have an idea of something that needs to be done that might be a little bit in their purview that could happen? Mr. Mayor.
I guess I would, just from what I've heard tonight and throughout my life here in Juneau, and being part of the school system and having family members being part of the school system, I think the big thing that we need to do is individualize our kids and our young people. Stop putting them into a numbered system and running them through our system. We have to somehow know the names of Kurt and Phil and Jack and Joan and Sally and what their individual needs are. And if our experts within our school district can give us a program to look at that and do that, I, as the leader, as the mayor of the city and borough, would be willing to look at changing how we fund and go after the kids as individuals. I think that's what I heard here the most tonight. treat them with respect, and individualize their training, the training system towards them. I know it's costly to do that, and it takes more adults to be in supervisory capacities, but I think that's a big step that we have to slowly start taking on.
Well, Mr. Gelbrook or Mr. O'Brien, there's the old, we need more individualization. You, in fact, are tasked with whoever comes in your door, whatever their needs, to try to get them out that door to graduation. It's hard to individualize education for each kid, given what you're supposed to be doing, and given the testing, and given all the things that has to go on now. And what you cram into a school day, I know, is pretty tough. Your parents also, I know, in Sean's case, Mr. O'Brien's case, how do you do that? How do you individualize? Can you do that? Is there something that can be done, maybe not individualization, but something that gets at that core that we need to make kids successful, that we are not doing now, that we could try to commit to as a district or as a community?
Well, I think it's a misnomer to say that we're not doing it now. I think we're not doing it enough, clearly. We have students here, we're in this conversation because we have more students who are not completing high school than we want for their lives and for the sake of the community as well. But is there something we can do so that more of our students graduate? I think the answer is yes. We can have more people who have a disposition that was expressed earlier by Gretchen, our teacher in this forum, which is to put the students first, to make a connection with the student. And then the content comes in. And it's not a trade-off. It's not one at the expense of the other. But we can't really do what we want to do with students, for students, if we don't have that connection with them. And we've heard that from the students very clearly. So I think of the things that we need to do, the first is we need to make that connection. So what can I do to make that happen? We can keep that in the front of our conversations about what it is that we want for kids. The first thing we want for kids is we want a relationship with those kids. And what they've told us tonight about the nature of that relationship is it isn't just we're buddies. It is you know me as a student, and you know who I am as a human being and my place in this world, and you're willing to hold me accountable. We heard a bunch of people tonight talk about high expectations, that part of respecting our students is to have very high expectations for them. So from my perspective, it is know the students first, have high expectations of them, hold them accountable, but do it through a relational way.
We've heard a lot about racism tonight, though. How does one go about that in terms of personalizing education or really knowing the student? Is that what you're talking about as well?
I think it's included in that. I think it's part of it is not being blind to race, but respecting race, and respecting that when children of color or children of a particular national origin or Native children come to us, they come to us with all the things that that race brings, and respecting that as a part of making the connection with kids. And so that's work we have to do in the community, and that's work that we're committed to doing. We've done it episodically over time.
In the district, you mean, with teachers and personnel in the district kind of thing?
Yeah,
to be able to do that?
And our support groups, our parent groups, and others in the community.
Okay. John, Mr. Pugh.
Well, just following up on that, I think one of the things that came up tonight, once again, particularly from the Alaska Native community, is really how important a sense of place is. And one of the things that I think is critical for teachers, and our teacher ed program is very important for us to make sure that as teachers go through that program, they really understand what sense of place means. And that really has to do with Indigenous people that were here many years ahead, and the traditions and the honoring those traditions and understanding how that impacts individuals. And I think that's something that we can do. We had a partnership with the school district this year working on new teachers both at the university and at the school district, trying to get a better program on so that individuals can understand they're coming into a place that is really important to a number of people, and that it's very important to the students. It's what is sort of their core values and their core sense of themselves, and it's only going to happen if teachers understand that and understand where they're coming from. That said, I think there are other things, such as that support must have been used 50 times from students, from others, and when you think of support, a lot of that has to do with you know, when you think of successful students, oftentimes we think of parental support. But we hear a number of students here say, I really didn't have that for various reasons. And I think the community has to reach out and provide that sense of support when we find students who don't have it. Because without it, they won't be successful. That could be an uncle, it could be an aunt, but it could be just an individual in the community who becomes that mentor for that student and really responds to that.
I know UAS is doing a renewal, sort of a Tlingit language, has courses and things. Is that making a difference, do you think? Or can you tell yet?
I think it is making a difference. I think it will make a greater difference as the time goes on. Okay. I think we're working with not just this district, but other districts to have Tlingit immersion programs, to also have the Haida language taught in schools. And I think that's a very important thing in the sense, again, sense of place, sense of what the history of this place and the culture. And many people now will say that without language you don't have culture. So if you don't have the language spoken regularly and really understood and so on, you can't really understand the culture, because the language is a critical part of the culture.
I want to ask Mr. Morse just to reflect on a statewide level on some of these things. What's going on a statewide level? Is there any funding that's particularly that you know of being directed more toward graduation rate and more success and addressing some of these issues we've been hearing tonight?
Well, I think the first thing that I want to mention is every student that spoke tonight eventually talked about an effective teacher in their life. And I think one key to that is how do we support effective teachers in becoming more effective. And then there are some people who probably don't belong in the profession. And we got to recognize that and help those find another place that's more effective for them. So I think one of the keys is laying out a real system that figures out who are effective teachers, and it's partnerships with the university system where we make sure we train teachers well. But it's also recognizing in the state we bring in about 70% of our teachers from outside the state. So we got to think about how do we do in-service training for those folks to make sure they're effective, they understand the culture that they're working in. This is an issue across the state. This isn't just within Juneau. I know Juneau's issue as well because I worked in the school system before I worked for the state. But that's a key factor. And I do think that Commissioner Hanley has some strong ideas around working to make sure kids in the secondary system, or middle school and secondary system, have a connection to the world outside. And we also heard someone in the last panel talk about high expectations. And I think high expectations come when people see a connection to real work. I'll remember in the first segment, Kayla talked about she went back to school and found out she really did have to do science. But there was a key there. She had to do science, not learn science. And we need to help all of our teachers become more effective at doing their subjects with their student instead of just teaching those subjects to people. So I think some of the work that we're doing in terms of trying to provide support to districts around professional development, those types of things, is really trying to get at that issue of effective teachers.
Great, okay. Ms. Becker, you are a former teacher. You are a member of the school, were a member of the school board, and now you're on the assembly. So you have a very unique perspective here. Have you heard something tonight that you feel that would make a real difference, that you could commit to, or the assembly could commit to, or that you feel strongly about personally?
Well, I very...
It's on. Mm-hmm.
I very much appreciate what everyone in this group has said, and I definitely agree that we need to personalize, individualize, help the students to feel, I know you said don't use that word valued, but I do think that's such an important word. I think that one thing I'd like to mention is that I don't believe that high school dropout starts in high school. I think it starts way back in preschool. And so I know that the Assembly does support like the Social Services Advisory Committee with funding, and each of those those nonprofits play a part in helping children, students, no matter what grade they're in. I think that one thing that's very, very important, and I believe the Assembly could do it, and all of us here could do it, is make sure the community hears what the students have said tonight. I know we're on KTOO, and hopefully many people are listening to this, but I think it's very important that we summarize real specifics. Students want to be heard, they want to be appreciated, and they don't want to be put down. They don't want to be put down no matter what the reason is. I'm trying to think of things that the Assembly basically could do, or the city staff. We probably would say staff in many cases. For instance, students get youth passes on the buses. And actually our homeless students can have free passes. We need to know where all of those children are and do whatever we can to help that situation. But we could make sure that our bus drivers and people who meet those students are positive with the students. That goes for Parks and Rec. We put a lot of money into Parks and Rec, and those people are with students, they're with children, they're with high school students, all kinds of activities. The positive message should be there. I did really appreciate the food comment that came up. I know that we do have a lot of breakfast programs in our grade school, and we do have lunch program at the high school where students, whether they can afford lunch or not, can have lunch. But I think that we have to always remember that food is very, very important, and kids cannot come to school hungry and be expected to do the work we want them to do. So I think we need to look at what we can do as a community to make sure that's there. I also think the health and the healthy part of our students' lives is very important, and I think we should not, as an assembly, cut budgets for things that do support the health of our young people. For instance, like the health center at the high schools.
Okay.
And the assembly helps support that. And that is important because students have a positive place to go, and sometimes it's counseling in a way. You know, they're just getting some of that type of work. There are
well, you've got lots of ideas. Once you started going there, you started really.
I was just waiting for these men to finish.
Well, we're going to ask another man.
Okay.
We have a few minutes left, and I do want to ask our current school board member, who also, I believe, is a graduate of Juneau. Douglas High School, and you've been on the board quite a while now, and you also have, I believe, 5 children who have gone through the system. So you have an interesting perspective too, Mr. O'Brien. And not too much time left, unfortunately. Yeah. What's missing that you think the board or you feel personally about?
Well, I think a little more time. I think we've, since the time I was on the board last in 2006 to 2009 or so to now, I have seen a much better movement towards that connective culture to teachers, to the community, to really reaching out and understanding the importance of connectivity, supporting staff, professional development, understanding better what's working in our schools, measuring those things, and having a very deliberate and systemic approach towards reinforcing. We talked about individualized instruction, digital one-to-one, computerized training. You can go on and on. There's really been some great developments. We still have a lot to work on. I do think we're on the right course, and I've seen a remarkably positive, and I think a more effective change towards that end, and I think we're starting to see the beginning results of that. But I just want to say what I've heard time and time again about our kids, and I have had 5 kids, 3 go through the system, and myself included. What's made or break it most of the time with our kids is that sense of belonging and connection. It's that student first. Who is that student? Where are they at? What do they need? And what can I do to help? With a positive enthusiasm from their peers, from their teachers, from our community at large, but also really understanding what is working. We have a lot of things that really are working that need to be grown. We have some things that maybe haven't been working so much, and with budget cuts that we have right now, we're going to have to let some things go. Yeah. So being very effective and smart, working hard but working smart, but really being attentive to our kids and what they need is where they're at, and that's really important. So thanks.
Thank you very much. We are out of time for this Talking Circle. I do want to thank all of you, too, for giving us your ideas about what's missing and about what we need, and also for being here, because you are people who can really make change probably more quickly than anybody else in the room when you reflecting on what you've heard. So thank you so much for being here tonight and for sharing your thoughts with us. Glad to have you. Finally, as we've promised, youth get the last word in this community conversation, and we now go live to Zach Gordon Youth Center across the street from our studios to hear from young people who have been watching this program. Andy Klein is going to talk to them.
Thanks, Betsy, so much. We are here at Zach Gordon Youth Center. We've had a group of kids coming in and out of here, young people coming in and out of here all night long watching this with a lot of interest. And I'm here with three young people, actually 4 young people. I should include this young person here as well. This is Tiernan and Tiernan's mom, Shelby. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
And this is Will.
Hello.
And also, as you saw earlier on the tape segment, here's Jasmine.
Hi.
So let's just talk with you first, Shelby. Really a story in your case. I think we can see it on your lap why you might have left school. But what's really interesting is that you found the strength and the fortitude and the resources to go back to school. Tell me a little bit about your journey back to school after leaving because of the birth of Tiernan.
Well, it wasn't her birth. I was pregnant with her at the time. I left school in the beginning because I had moved up here from Iowa, and down there you have to have 52 credits to graduate. So I transferred up here, and they cut the credits in half, and I only need a couple credits to graduate. But I slacked off in school during my sophomore or my junior year, and I had to go back down south. I got sent back down there, and my credits got all messed up, and I would have had to do 2 more years of high school to graduate, and I would have graduated on time. So me being the person I was at the time, I told myself, I was like, well, I don't want to wait 2 years, so I just dropped out, and I waited a couple years. I went back to school when I was 19, turning 20 at the time, and I didn't have any intentions on going back because I didn't have any intentions on getting pregnant, but it happened, and well, I figured, I was like, well, later on in life, I'm going to want to have this degree and this diploma for my daughter's sake, and I was like, if it's not for mine, at least it's for my daughter.
And you ended up using the alternative high school of Yakutsk in order to do that?
Yeah, Yakutsk, because I had aged out of JDHS, I wasn't able to go back, so my cousin's like, well, I'm 20 and I'm going to Yakutsk, and I was like, oh, well, cool, they take people that are of that age, and he's like, yeah, and you can graduate. I was like, awesome.
Great. Well, we've only just got a little bit of time, and I just want to get to Will and Jasmine as well. Will, if you could tell a friend of yours that was thinking about dropping out of high school, I know you've been out of high school for a couple of years, but if you were going to tell a kid who was going to drop out of high school one thing, what would it be?
Well, that's kind of a hard question. I've really been thinking over what a lot of people have been saying tonight about the trans and intergenerational trauma and the racism, and we really need something restorative to, like, I think the Tlingit language being taught in the schools is great, and I mean, this conversation right here is really good, but yeah, I don't know exactly what I would say to someone who was thinking about dropping out. I would try and persuade them against it, but I think we need to have more interdisciplinary and intercultural conversations just like this one with students as well.
Well, thanks, Will. And Jasmine, I'm sorry, we've got to wrap up, actually, but thanks so much for the taped interview, and thanks so much for your contributions and for watching here tonight. As I said, we're running out of time here tonight. Betsy, we're going to get back to you in the studio. That's the story here from Zach Gordon Youth Center, sitting around with a lot of very motivated young people talking about school, staying in school, and graduating.
Great. Thank you, Andy, very much, and thanks to those of you over there who were watching and commenting. We also want to thank you for joining us this evening from around Alaska to focus on getting to graduation. We are grateful to the many people who came together this evening and to the youth who so generously agreed to talk openly about their journey to finish high school. Each of us can do something to support young people on that path, whether it's talking up the value of the diploma, giving a young person an internship at our business, contributing to nonprofits that provide youth services, opening our homes to youth in foster care, or advocating for this issue with elected officials. As you can see, it's an important issue for all of us. I'm Betsy Brenneman. Good night.
program is made possible in part with support from the Association of Alaska School Boards, advocating for children and youth by assisting school boards in providing quality public education through effective local governance, the National Center for Media Engagement, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.